Every day, spring presented new surprises. Yet these unexpected gifts brought joy and filled the heart with a tantalizing anticipation of happiness. Acacia Arias was also excited, and this feeling was spreading inside her like a warm indulgence. Parting the curtains, she opened the window, and the air saturated with the sense of spring rushed into the spacious kitchen. She exposed her face to this invigorating stream and whispered, "Oh, how wonderful! It's not for nothing that they say that spring awakens the desire to live." Acacia straightened her shoulders. "Romance is a useful thing, but not for me. And it's all because life adopted the format of duties a long time ago." She placed a kettle on the gas stove and headed for the refrigerator. Slapping footsteps echoed in the hallway, and she froze for a second in surprise. Then, in a rather loud voice, she exclaimed, "Juan, I nearly had a heart attack. You could have informed me. I completely forgot that I had tenants." Juan was still sleepy, so he grinned foolishly and said, "All right, Mom. Today, I'll buy a whistle at the toy store, and every morning before leaving the room, I'll remind you that you're not alone in this apartment." The young man delivered the last sentence like a seasoned orator, enhancing his morning performance with expressive gestures and facial expressions. Acacia shook her head disapprovingly. "Juan, stop mugging. You'll be almost 35 soon, and you're acting like a little boy. It's time to grow up." "Mom, this trait is practically observed in all men. I mean the tendency for childish behavior. But you, women, can't understand that behind such inappropriate conduct lies courage, readiness for self-sacrifice, and... Acacia burst into laughter. "I get it. Your oratory skills are quite good, but your vocabulary is clearly suffering. Come on, wake up your better half, it's time for breakfast. The kettle is almost ready, we just need to prepare the sandwiches." At that moment, the kettle chimed, and the woman hurried to the stove. She didn't see her son's face contorted in a bewildered expression. Then there was a long pause, and the mother turned around. "What? Did you two have a fight?" Juan waved his hands actively. "No, Mom. Everything's fine between Dora and me in that regard. It's just that my wife had a little mishap, and you came late, so I didn't want to bother you." Acacia cautiously placed the kettle on the burner. "What mishap are you talking about?" Juan chuckled nervously, which clearly didn't match the tone of the message. "Dora suddenly got a severe stomachache last night, so bad that we had to call an ambulance." The woman's face turned pale, and she slumped weakly onto the edge of the stylish stool that adorned the kitchen interior. "Tell me, how is she? Is it something serious? She's not pregnant, by any chance, is she?" Juan didn't expect such a reaction and grew genuinely anxious. "Mom, everything turned out fine. At first, we thought it might be something related to women's issues. But that version was quickly ruled out. So, you can relax, your daughter-in-law is okay. She had an appendicitis, and they performed surgery on her." Mention of the surgical procedure only worsened Acacia's state. She started breathing heavily, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Did you call from the hospital? Is it really that serious?" "Mom, don't worry so much, the danger is already behind us. And I was at the hospital early this morning, taking care of my beloved wife's health. She had surgery at 3 o'clock. So, you can't accuse me of being heartless. I'm sweating because I'm really anxious. You were asking me questions as if it were a trial. Usually, mothers-in-law don't worry too much about their daughters-in-law." With a sense of duty fulfilled, Juan sighed and headed to the refrigerator. "All right, what do we have to snack on during this stress?" His mother beat him to it. "Sit at the table, I'll prepare something myself. Every time you open the fridge, I have to organize things there again." Juan didn't argue and took a seat at the table. "Mom, I'm so hungry." "Probably because I'm nervous. I mean, when Dora started feeling bad, I was seriously scared. I've never been in such a situation before." Acacia threw a fleeting glance at her son. There was a situation like that before, Juan, you just forgot. Juan felt a burning sensation inside him. His mother's words sounded like reproach or rebuke, and they reminded him of a long-ago family tragedy. Engaging in an argument now with the person whose support undeniably contributed to his future well-being was not something he wanted. Thus, the best course of action for the grown son in this situation was to switch to another topic. Juan had often used this strategy in his childhood, and he was ready to employ it now. Mom, I've wanted to ask you for a while, but there never seemed to be a suitable moment. What if you moved in with us? Just think about it. Running a serious business far from civilization is tough and not very convenient. Dora and I have a spacious apartment, too many square meters for just the two of us. The renovations will be done soon, and it'll become even cozier, so think about it. Acacia saw through her son's maneuver, but she didn't want to spoil the morning mood either. She just remarked, "You're quite a smooth talker, Juan. You think you can change my mind by shifting the blame? It won't work. I can guess your intentions from the way you breathe." The woman quickly cleared the dishes from the table. "And as for moving, I've already said everything a long time ago. I feel perfectly comfortable here. In modern times, you can run a business from any corner of the planet, even from the North Pole." Juan slipped by and didn't forget to kiss his mother on the cheek. When he was in the hallway, he shouted, "Mom, Dora is in her second surgery, in room number 6. If you go, bring slippers and a robe. I'll stop by to see her in the evening. Juan, maybe you should bring her something to eat." Juan reappeared in the narrow space of the hallway, which the tenants humorously referred to as the promised land between the entrance hall and the kitchen. "Mom, are you kidding? After abdominal surgery, you can't eat anything at all. I think you can drink, but eating is a no-go." "Well, fine, I'm off. After all, the son of the company's CEO should be a role model." Acacia, as if recalling something important, made a significant gesture. "Juan, hold on. This news about Dora's illness really caught me off guard. I forgot to inform you that starting today, we'll be procuring all consumables and hardware through a tender process." "Sure, Mom. I'll make sure these slackers prepare the documents, and I'll inform the partners about the changes." The company's head cut her son off. "No, focus on your direct responsibilities. I've assigned Rodrigo to handle this matter. Rodrigo has extensive experience, and he has a special knack for identifying subpar products." Juan was caught off guard, as he didn't expect such a maneuver from his mother. A bitter expression distorted his face. "I get it, no need to explain. I've always been somewhat undercooked in your eyes, but you spare my ego. You don't tell me these things." In a burst of less than positive emotions, he kicked his slippers, sending them flying into the living room. Acacia approached him closely and looked into his eyes, but it wasn't the warm gaze of a loving mother, it was the cold gaze of a successful businesswoman. "Temper your enthusiasm. Be thankful that I handled the issue with the previous supplies that nearly caused us reputational damage." Juan instantly deflated, and his shoulders slumped. His mother's authoritative voice had always suppressed his desire to resist, even in childhood. He couldn't forgive himself for this weakness, but he also hadn't managed to overcome it. Acacia fully understood his state. "I don't know, Juan, what prompted you to engage with that dubious supplier, like the company Cleopatra. But I cannot afford to take risks. After all, we're talking about dozens of people who work for the company. Considering that we employ individuals with limited physical abilities, we have a range of privileges, and I cannot allow myself or anyone else to deceive these people, deprive them of their present and future. So, I've made this decision, but you shouldn't hold it against me. It's better to learn from Rodrigo, he knows how to handle even the most uncooperative partners." Juan got angry. "Mom, your Rodrigo is a scoundrel like no other. He's as guilty as a sin, but you don't see it." Acacia smirked. "Well, Juan, I see you've inherited my strong sense of judgment. But remember, even the most unconventional paths have their merits. The key is knowing when to apply them. People like that are usually called entrepreneurs. They're very useful in business. And I strongly recommend that you establish a good relationship with Rodrigo. Mom, just half an hour ago, you were reminding me that I'm not old enough. Sorry, but I don't want to take lessons from your Rodrigo. If he's such a stellar employee, it's time to put a bronze bust of him in front of our office and write his name in gold. The woman laughed. Juan, enough with the mugging. I'm saying it again, don't hold it against me. I'm doing everything for your and Dora's well-being. Juan didn't say anything, but he irritably thought that his mother was trying to create a harmonious duo once again. She had never talked about him as an individual. This fact had contributed to the formation of a bunch of complexes a while ago, which still hindered his life. Once, his stepsister was a counterweight, and now Dora had taken the place of his mother's favorite. Seeds of jealousy from his mother towards his wife had only recently started to grow in Juan's heart. He knew it wouldn't lead to anything good. But suppressing this dull feeling had proven to be quite difficult. If someone had told Acacia 5 years ago that the arrival of a provincial girl in her house would completely change her own life, she wouldn't have believed it. However, Dora made the mother-in-law see past events and current issues in a new light. The most positive aspect for the mother was that her daughter-in-law had taught her son to handle life more gently. After all, Juan's bachelor period had far exceeded acceptable limits, and his mother often reproached him. Juan, can't you find a good girl? You're just bouncing around, fiddling. It's like you're just wandering aimlessly for the rest of your life. Her son found these conversations amusing and sometimes purposely provoked his mother. Mom, I'm quite content with this lifestyle. No commitments, you're only responsible for yourself, it's carefree living. But that's not normal. A grown man shouldn't resemble a creature that can't take responsibility for anything. Mom, that's your personal opinion. I have a different one. I consider it the height of foolishness when someone willingly hangs a yoke around their own neck. If you keep thinking like that, you'll end up alone for the rest of your life. Mom, I'm taking an example from you, you're alone too. But I don't see any signs that you're suffering from it. Don't compare me to yourself. Especially since, as my grandmother used to say, I managed to get married twice. Oh, by the way, my grandma, it's a pity you didn't get to meet her, knew so many customs. She told me that in ancient times, they used to hang a heavy yoke around the necks of confirmed bachelors. This custom left a negative impression on Juan. What medieval barbarism! Everyone stuck to their own opinions, but nonetheless, this conversation had an impact on Juan, and he soon entered into a stable relationship with a girl. For nearly 2 years, Juan and Francisco lived together in a civil marriage. Acacia kept it a secret from acquaintances that her son was living with a girl, but the young couple wasn't at all embarrassed. On the contrary, they liked the liberty in their relationship, and, on occasion, they would emphasize the benefits of such a union. Francisca shared her thoughts on this matter approximately like this. The world is changing, and people should also fight against outdated stereotypes. Personally, I see marriage as an unnecessary formality. Although Acacia disagreed with such a viewpoint, she tried not to meddle in the young couple's relationship. Francisca was from a good family. Initially, she even made a positive impression on Juan's mother. However, during a conversation with her future mother-in-law, Francisca revealed her true nature by stating that a husband is a person who is obliged to fulfill any whim of his wife. Acacia was horrified. Francisca, what about love? It's impossible to build lasting relationships without that feeling. The girl looked at her boyfriend's mother and calmly replied, love, sweet talk, and all those other tender things are all utopian, unnecessary remnants. I already told you that relationships between people in modern society are now built on different principles. No matter how much the woman asked, Francisca couldn't articulate these principles. In her heart, Acacia hoped that a union based on these unclear norms wouldn't last long. Her premonitions were proven right. One day, Juan visited her early in the morning, and after a brief greeting, he asked, Mom, you wouldn't mind if I crashed at your place for a week, would you? Not a muscle twitched on the mother's face, although she had a hunch about the reason for his sudden visit. She calmly replied, "You didn't need to ask. This is your home, and you're welcome here at any time." In a surge of sincere emotions, the son embraced his mother. "You know, it's really great to have someone who understands everything without words." Acacia didn't intrude on her son's feelings and waited for him to tell her about the reason for breaking up with Francisca. "Mom, you won't believe it, but I often think of you. I wanted to break up with her earlier, but I endured. I don't even know why such sacrifices were necessary. Without patience, my dear, you can't build anything. And for family life, this ability is absolutely essential. So, what caused the discord between you two?" "Mom, it's all so mundane. In 2 words, Francisca simply annoyed me with her constant demands. Every day a new dream would overtake her, and for some reason, I was chosen as the executor of these wishes. For a long time, I was trying to convince myself that it was a temporary thing, but then I realized that in Francisca's view, any man is a walking ATM or a magician who can conjure money out of thin air." Acacia found these thoughts sensible. She was even relieved that her son decided to break up with Francisca. The woman stubbornly believed that Juan would surely meet a girl with whom he could build a strong family. However, after parting ways with Francisca, the young man started leading a wild lifestyle. He rented an apartment in the city center and almost daily organized noisy parties there. Rumors about what her son was doing in his free time from work reached his mother's ears. Yet, she understood that there was no point in reprimanding a grown man. Only once, unable to hold back her regret, she said, "Juan, of course, you're free to live your life as you wish, but remember that one day, as a famous writer once said, you will painfully regret the days you spent pointlessly." Juan smirked wryly. "Mom, you hit the nail on the head. I've been experiencing those feelings for a long time already." "Then I don't understand why you're not trying to change something." The young man sighed heavily. "Going with the flow is easier, and I'm already used to it." Her son's candid admission shocked the mother, but she realized she couldn't persuade him. Acacia thought hard about how to help Juan, and one day, driven by some internal impulse, she went to a local temple. Acacia didn't know any specific prayers, so she addressed the higher powers with words that came straight from her heart. "Heavens, help my son, guide him onto the right path. I turn to you as a loving mother, concerned for her child. Do not deny your grace." Acacia whispered the prayer while tears streamed down her cheeks. An unfamiliar old woman observed her for a while, then approached closer. "Pray, my dear. Sincere words will be heard and will not go unanswered." The woman looked at the old lady, who somehow reminded her of her long-deceased grandmother. "Thank you." She walked slowly through the church, a pleasant grace spreading in her heart. An encouraging inner voice whispered, "Believe, Acacia, everything will be all right." Once again, her grandmother came to mind, who always used that form of her name. Acacia considered it a sign from above, as her grandmother had been a deeply religious person. The next day, Acacia was praying again in front of the icons, but the old woman wasn't there. Surprisingly, she started regularly visiting this place of spiritual solace. Each time after her prayer, she left a small donation for the needs of the temple. Perhaps her appeals were heard in the heavens, or it was a series of coincidences, but Juan's life underwent a drastic change. One day, he arrived unexpectedly with a petite, red-haired girl. In a solemn tone, he declared, "Mom, welcome the guests. This is Dora Santos, my fiancée." Juan was beaming with happiness, and his mother understood that he was very happy in that moment. Dora admired him but remained silent throughout. Acacia was charmed by this sweet girl from the very first moment. She fussed around the guest, trying to anticipate every wish. "Dora, come in, make yourself at home." "Juan, why are you standing there like a stone statue?" Juan was pleased that his mother was so active around the girl. He had expected a slightly different reception and was very surprised by the warmth and even tenderness emanating from his usually stern mother. Seizing a convenient moment, he whispered, "Mom, I can't recognize today. You're right in your element." Acacia looked at her son reproachfully. "And how do you think I should behave? Should I pounce on the girl with questions?" Juan said, "No, Mom, keep it up." I can see Dora is in shock. She's not used to such attention. Indeed, on the first evening, the guest felt awkward and acted very reserved. Every time there was a question, she blushed and lowered her eyes. Therefore, Acacia decided not to embarrass the girl and postponed delving into her biography for a more opportune time. After dinner, her son approached her and whispered in her ear, "Mom, if possible, could you set up Dora in Clara's room?" The woman looked at her son with surprise. "But aren't you too?" "No, Mom. Dora is, shall we say, raised in old traditions. She wants our relationship to progress step by step." "And you've decided to comply?" "No, Mom, it's not playing along, but rather a desire not to unintentionally offend a person who means a lot to me. Dora is an amazing woman, she's almost otherworldly. I confess, I get tremendous pleasure just being around her, looking into her endless eyes." "Juan, it seems like you're genuinely in love." The mother was happy. Acacia really wanted this shy girl, who wore no makeup on her face, to truly feel comfortable in their apartment. She showed her to a room that had been vacant for almost 10 years. "Get settled, Dora, and don't hesitate to come to me if you have any problems." Unexpectedly, for a brief moment, the girl leaned towards her. "You remind me so much of my mom." She said it with such sadness that Acacia realized that there had been a recent tragedy in the girl's family. She feared prying into her affairs and refrained from asking, but Dora herself briefly revealed her personal misfortune. "My mom passed away last year. She never fell ill, not even with a cold. And then she suddenly felt so unwell, she couldn't get out of bed. My sister and I thought it was an infection. We called the doctor. He said things were really bad." Clearly, the fresh wound had not yet healed, and Dora's voice trembled. Acacia embraced her. "If it hurts, try not to dwell on it." The girl began to cry on her future mother-in-law's chest. "I try not to think about it, but I can't help it. My mom is always before my eyes, as if she's still alive. It all happened so quickly, in just 2 months, the illness caught her. It's been over a year, and we still can't get back on our feet. And my dad still can't believe that mom is gone. They loved each other so much. He says that life without mom has lost all meaning." Acacia sat the girl down on the bed and sat down next to her. "I also suffered a terrible blow many years ago. I lost my youngest daughter." Dora wiped her tears with the back of her hand, like a child. "Yes, Juan mentioned this tragedy to me, but without details. We have an unspoken agreement not to talk about it. More precisely, we disagree on this matter, and we don't want to worsen the situation. Juan is convinced that Clara is dead, and I know she's alive. No one can deceive a mother's heart." Dora nestled against Acacia once again. "Is this your daughter's room?" "Yes, everything has remained the same as it was on that last evening before Clara's disappearance. Lie down, Dora, may joyful dreams visit you." The woman didn't notice how she shifted to a more intimate conversation. She kissed her son's friend as she used to kiss her youngest daughter. Juan was busy in the kitchen. Seeing his mother, he asked with a smirk, "So, what were you two whispering about so secretly?" "Oh, nothing important. We just had a little chat about life." Acacia's gaze slid across her son's face and froze somewhere beyond the window. "Juan, I'm not a superstitious person, but it seems to me that Dora's appearance wasn't accidental. She looks so much like Clara." Her son saw that his mother was on the verge of breaking down and swore inwardly. "Mom, we had an agreement." The woman smiled shyly and crossed her arms over her chest. Yes. I remember, but it just keeps coming to mind." The age is almost right, and this girl does look. Juan raised his voice. No resemblance at all. Mom, you're trying to convince yourself of that. I thought things had settled down, and yet, for some reason, you're digging up the past again. It was evident the young man was irritated, nervously tapping his fingers on the table surface, which was made of natural stone. If I had known it would be like this, I would have postponed getting to know Dora. His mother looked directly into her son's eyes, and that look made him flinch, as did her words. Juan, I often catch myself thinking that you don't care about your sister's fate at all. Right now, you're talking about Clara as if she's a piece of decoration, not a living person. But she's your sister. I don't want to think that you've become so callous. Juan understood he had to say something, but his tongue felt stuck to the roof of his mouth. Acacia looked at him again and went into her room. Don't forget to turn off the lights in the kitchen when you go to bed. For a whole week, the children stayed at Juan's mother's place. During this time, Acacia grew very fond of Dora and eagerly shared the secrets of her favorite home recipes. The women established good relationship almost immediately, and this bond remained unbroken for 3 years. When there was a chance, Dora boasted to her friends and colleagues at work about her friendship with her mother-in-law. Acacia is an extraordinary woman. She breaks all the stereotypes associated with mothers-in-law. You may not believe me, but she has replaced my own mother. I'm very grateful to her for that. Representatives of the pessimists' camp insisted that such attachment was temporary because any mother would side with her son. However, even Juan himself was horrified to notice that his young wife was gradually winning over the heart of his precious mother. The Central Hospital was a modern complex packed with the most advanced equipment. However, the most valuable asset of the medical institution was its staff. Right after its opening, not only medical school graduates rushed here, but also experienced doctors with rich practical experience. Every time Acacia passed by the hospital, she thought, if this had appeared in our city about 10 years earlier, maybe Mom would have survived. But as they say, you can't outride fate on a horse. And the fate of the successful entrepreneur was not easy. Acacia Arias' childhood was truly happy. She was the only child in the family, so all the love of her parents and grandmother was solely hers. Alberto, the girl's father, worked as a construction foreman. He would tell his daughter about cities that were bound to rise across the vast country. Acacia would listen to her father with her mouth agape, and then bombard him with her childish questions. Daddy, when these cities appear, will they give us a big apartment? During those years, there was a severe shortage of decent housing, and most families waited in line for decades to get an apartment. But their hopes of getting their own legal apartment in their lifetime were low. Therefore, those citizens who had a bit more money would join cooperatives. Alberto decided to use this method to improve their housing conditions. He announced this to his wife and daughter one day. All right, girls, I've been thinking during my free time, and I've decided that we need to do something about our housing. How much longer can we squeeze into this little room? Since discussions about cooperative construction had been going on in the family for a while, Acacia immediately objected. Alberto, you yourself said that a mortgage is an eternal hassle. We'll be paying for it our whole lives. The man gave his wife a mysterious look. Don't worry, we'll manage. I've been offered a good position, and that means I'll be making almost twice as much. The woman didn't give up. Alberto, what if something happens to you, for God's sake? What will we do with Acacia then? I think we shouldn't rush into things. The queue is moving, and in about 5 years, we'll get an apartment. Acacia, don't delude yourself with dreams. You know very well that getting state housing is nearly impossible. And there's no sign of getting it in 5 years. We'll be wasting away in the dormitory for the rest of our lives, and we'll grow old in this little room with mold-covered walls. The woman didn't give up. We could live with my mom, the conditions are better there. I've offered it to you many times, but you're so stubborn. Acacia was watching the argument between her parents, and at that very moment, when her mother mentioned the headstrong animal, she decisively sided with her father. Mom, you said we shouldn't call names, and you just used a bad word for Dad. I also think that we need to buy an apartment. The 5-year-old little girl expressed her opinion so vividly that her parents couldn't help but laugh. When everyone stopped laughing, Alberto nodded at his daughter and said to his wife, "You see, Ingracia, Acacia has already decided everything for us. By the way, contrary to your conventional beliefs, getting into a cooperative today isn't that easy. People have money now, and many want to invest their savings in real estate." With undisguised sarcasm, the woman asked, "I wonder, how will you manage it?" The man spread a satisfied smile. "As a construction industry worker, I have benefits. Moreover, we've already been put on the list, and now we need to make the initial payment by the end of this month." Ingracia raised her hands in exasperation. "Alberto, where will we get that much money? I wonder what you were thinking about when you decided on this adventure." The man croaked with self-satisfaction. "Don't panic, we have the money. We'll take it from the amount we've saved for buying a car. Alberto, but our turn is about to come up. If we leave the queue now, we'll have to start from scratch." Acacia could see that her mother was on the verge of tears and began to console her. "Mommy, don't cry. We'll definitely buy a car later. Right, Dad?" The woman looked at her daughter, then at her husband. "You've conspired against me. Do whatever you want, but then don't blame me for anything." Alberto put on a serious expression. "That's enough, Ingracia, no more tears and reproaches. Let's consider this matter closed. As the head of our little family, I believe that the apartment is more important for us today. As for the car, unfortunately, in our country, personal transport is still a luxury, not a means for quick movement." Since the score wasn't in her favor, Ingracia had to give up and say goodbye, at least for the time being, to her dream of buying her own car. But for a long time after the significant conversation with her husband, she would often grumble in the kitchen. "Everyone will get free state housing by the year 2000, and we'll have to pay. It's a move worthy of idiots." Of course, Alberto knew about his wife's mood, but pretended not to notice. And soon enough, Ingracia herself became resigned to the idea that they would live in a cooperative apartment and that all the comforts would have to be paid for out of their own pockets. In less than 2 years, the 9-story building was completed, and the Arias family moved into a spacious 3-room apartment. Ingracia couldn't believe her luck. "Oh my God! They even have an imported stove, and the bathroom is all tiled." The trendy wallpaper also suited the hostess's taste, but the real delight for her was the balcony. "Alberto, we can store all the things here that we'd hate to throw away." The man raised a warning finger upward. "I must disappoint you, as storing junk isn't safe. By the way, it's considered a violation, and homeowners risk hefty fines." While the parents argued about where and what to store in the apartment, Acacia silently surveyed the new space. The girl was amazed by the spaciousness, but what struck her the most was having her own room. Over the next few years, she got used to the new conditions, so the move to the new apartment had a great impact on Acacia's life. This event became a sort of starting point for all the changes that would happen later. But the happiness of the Arias family didn't last long. When Acacia entered middle school, Alberto suffered a serious injury at work. For several months, the man lay in the hospital, bedridden. During that time, the city's residents received treatment in an old building in need of major repairs, making the living conditions there appalling. Ingracia didn't leave her husband's side day and night, and only through her efforts did partial mobility return to him. Of course, after such a severe injury, there was no question of Alberto returning to his former job. The family hoped that the victim would at least receive some compensation for the damage done to his health, but the construction company where Alberto worked refused to acknowledge that the disaster happened due to the negligent treatment of workers' safety. The blame was shifted entirely onto the injured man's shoulders, leading to legal battles that Alberto struggled to bear. He became bitter, irritable, and often drank alcohol. Ingracia tried to reason with her husband. "Alberto, you yourself used to say that difficulties strengthen a person, and now you're giving up without a fight. And Gracia, look at me, what kind of fighter am I? I can barely move around the apartment, getting pennies from my disability. What kind of strengthening is there? I might as well get drunk and forget it all. Such arguments happened almost daily, and with time, financial difficulties emerged as well. And Gracia worked herself to exhaustion, but her meager salary was barely enough for even modest meals, let alone other expenses. One day, she initiated an unpleasant conversation. My dears, I've thought a lot and come to the conclusion that this apartment is too much luxury for us. Acacia was overcome with horror. Mom, are you suggesting we move back to a dormitory? Well, why such extremes? We could temporarily move in with Grandma. No way. I won't live in a cramped house. And how will Dad manage in those conditions? Because at Grandma's, the toilet and the water supplies are outside. And Gracia muttered in confusion. I didn't consider that. But there's another option, exchange our apartment for a smaller one. Up until that point, Alberto had been silent, but when his wife brought up the idea of exchanging apartments, he firmly said, And Gracia, stop it, there's only a little bit left to pay. In a fit of hysteria, the woman cried out, Alberto, we can't even afford food, and you're telling me to wait? If this continues, we'll end up on the streets. And Gracia, don't yell at me, I'll definitely come up with something. But don't rush into selling the apartment. Mark my words, soon there will be such processes that owning your own home will be the ultimate form of security. Acacia was surprised by such a lengthy monologue from her father, as his disability had made him gloomy and uncommunicative. Many times, he had tried to find ways to use his strength, but everything had ended in failure. To escape poverty, Gracia worked double shifts. She would come home and immediately collapse from exhaustion. I don't know how much longer I can keep going. My life feels like a crazy race. I've seen in the circus how a motorcyclist rides along the wall. If they suddenly slow down, they'll fall and shatter. That's how I feel like that motorcyclist, she said. Acacia didn't attach too much importance to her mother's musings, but she tried to ease her mother's burden and often helped her after school. In the sewing workshop where Gracia had worked for many years, they made blankets and bedding. Acacia quickly learned the techniques and often took over the sewing machine for her mother. The older women whispered behind their backs, Well done, girl. She's helping her mother. Let's just hope she doesn't get caught by the management. But it seems someone did report Gracia, and the head of the workshop once caught Acacia in the act. She launched a tirade of insults at the mother. Gracia, what are you doing? Lately, you don't seem like yourself, and I suspect you've started drinking with your husband. Although offensive, the statement was met with silence from the mother, who lowered her gaze and tightly held onto her daughter's hand. This gesture indicated to Acacia that she needed to stay quiet and endure the insults. At first, Acacia obeyed her mother's wish, but she eventually devised a clever plan. She smiled and said to the workshop manager, Viola, please don't scold my mom. It's my fault, I persuaded her. You know, I dream of working here, I love everything about it. I'm completely amazed by the machines that do their own work. Acacia praised the production in every way possible, and the manager stared at her with wide eyes. When Acacia finally stopped, Viola said with genuine excitement, Smart girl, we need people like you. You can come in when you have free time and interest, learn the profession. And after you finish school, I promise you'll have a job. Of course, Acacia wasn't being paid, but her mother received bonuses every month. With Acacia's help, the family achieved a somewhat stable situation. Soon after, with the help of friends, Alberto himself found a job. During all the years of his disability, he trained relentlessly, and this effort paid off. Alberto was now able to walk a bit with the help of a cane, instead of relying solely on crutches or a wheelchair. One day, her father came home and joyfully announced, Girls, I've got a job. Gracia was surprised. And who decided to take you? Well, I've been accepted into a company recommended by Valerio. I'll be guarding a warehouse. To celebrate this event, Ingratia even decided to have a small party at home. In the evening, after the guests had left, she looked up at the ceiling and softly said to her daughter, "Acacia, maybe God heard my prayers. Perhaps he'll grant us a bit of a peaceful life." Alberto worked for only a couple of months, but one morning he didn't return from his shift. Following her mother's orders, Acacia hurried to the warehouses to check if her father was once again drinking with his friends. But in the guardhouse, she found her father's lifeless body. The doctors later said that death had been instantaneous because some blood vessels had burst. It was a terrible blow, and this time Ingratia couldn't handle it. The strain of work and her husband's death created favorable conditions for the development of diabetes. The disease progressed severely, and by the age of 50, Ingratia had almost lost her sight. Acacia's grandmother used to repeat, "When trouble comes, open the gates and prepare to face a heap of misfortunes." In her childhood, Acacia didn't understand the true meaning of this proverb. It was only when she was left alone with a pile of problems and a sick mother that she truly grasped the significance of this common saying. While she used to let herself dream of the future, of attending university or even a college, after her father's death, all hopes were shattered. Acacia even had to forego her high school graduation ceremony because she couldn't afford a decent dress and shoes. She received her diploma, and the next day she headed to the sewing factory where her mother used to work. Viola, the head of the workshop, greeted her warmly. "Welcome, our golden girl, Acacia. How happy I am to see you. Are you just visiting, or do you have business here?" Acacia mumbled, "I'm here on business, Viola," and briefly recounted the essence of her problem. The workshop manager invited her into her office. "Let's have a talk. It's too noisy here, and there are too many ears around." The woman's last remark was not without reason. Acacia noticed that her presence had sparked lively interest among the female employees. She followed Viola into a small room with a single window. The office owner immediately got down to business. "Of course, I'll help you because your mother has done a lot for our company. But I must warn you that our workshop might be closed down completely or got sold. There are rumors going around. But there's nothing to fix now because unprofitable businesses are of no use to anyone. That's the way the cookie crumbles. So, if you have other options, it's better not to take the risk." But Acacia didn't have any other options, and she remained at the factory until the very end. The workshop was shut down just before the new year, compensating the workers with a small sum. Acacia didn't know how to tell her mother that she had lost her job. But Ingratia understood everything. "Acacia, don't cry. I've known for a long time that our shady operation would eventually close down. Everything was leading up to this. Don't lose hope, we won't go down without a fight. We'll sell Grandma's house, we even have a buyer lined up. We'll see where things go from there." The money from selling the old log house in the suburbs didn't last long. In the city, being unemployed had become the norm. Acacia hopped from one temporary job to another, but the situation worsened with each passing day. Once again, her mother came to the rescue with advice. "Daughter, contact Viola. She's a kind woman who has always helped everyone, and she scolded only to maintain her authority." Acacia was surprised. "I wonder, how will your former boss help us?" "Oh, you even ask. I spend most of my time at home, sick through and through, sitting by the window, and yet I still manage to keep an eye on the country's events. Haven't you heard that everyone is rushing into cooperatives now? It's that kind of time when you have to seize the moment. Many of my acquaintances have jumped into trading. Strange things are happening, you see. Just a while ago, they were cracking down on swindlers and even giving them jail time, but now you can sell anything freely." Acacia listened to her mother, but she didn't understand where she was leading. "Mom, what does your Viola have to do with this?" "Because she managed to retrain as well. She now goes to Poland or somewhere else, brings back fashionable items, and sells them here. Talk to her, ask for help, maybe she won't refuse." Acacia found her former boss from the sewing factory at the market, but the young woman didn't immediately recognize the well-dressed Viola, whose appearance was quite different from her old professional look. Viola was the first to greet her. "Acacia, hi. Where are you headed? Looking to buy something or searching for someone?" Acacia replied enthusiastically. "I'm looking for you, Viola." "Troubles again?" There were hints of concern in Viola's tone, and Acacia felt awkward. But it was too late to back down, and she feigned cheerfulness as she explained to her old acquaintance. "Yes, in a way. Sorry to bother you, but there's no one else to turn to. My mom and I are left with almost nothing. We had to sell Grandma's house, practically for nothing. But the money barely lasted a year. I can't find work in the city, and I can't leave my mom alone. Maybe you can suggest a place where I can find a job." Viola gave the young woman an evaluating look. "You know what, kiddo? Come work with me as an assistant. It's a bit inconvenient for me to go back and forth for merchandise alone and then stand here. My system is well established, so you won't run into any issues." Acacia, without hearing her benefactor's entire proposal, agreed. "I'm fine with whatever. I'll do whatever you say." Viola shook her head. "You didn't even ask about the pay? And that's the most important thing in our line of work. It doesn't matter to me as long as it's enough to buy bread. It will be enough for bread and even butter with sausage. So here's the deal, I pay by commission, meaning it depends on the revenue." Since Acacia didn't have much life experience at the time, she didn't delve into the intricacies of entrepreneurial endeavors. On the same day, she joined a group of local traders to fetch merchandise. Back then, it was still possible to travel to other countries without a visa. Before the journey, Viola provided Acacia with detailed instructions and assigned the task of looking after the intern to the driver. "Make sure there are no hitches anywhere and assist the girl." A handsome brunette boy cast a fiery gaze at Acacia. "Don't worry, Viola, I promise everything will be fine." The young man bore a rare name, Leon. He immediately took notice of the attractive assistant to the shop owner and entertained her throughout the journey with incredible stories. Acacia hadn't been the center of attention for guys in school, so she looked at Leon as if he were a deity who had descended to Earth. Of course, on that first day, she couldn't have guessed where her fascination would lead. The young man helped her procure merchandise and then loaded the bags into the car himself. The fellow passengers watched this scene with envy, and one woman couldn't resist. "How touching. I see it and remember my youth. Acacia, don't miss out on such a desirable suitor. Nowadays, guys this responsive are a rarity." Acacia wasn't accustomed to such remarks, and she blushed, a moment not lost on Leon. "Don't pay attention to them. These ladies have seen it all and can come up with quite a few things that will make you stop being surprised." Indeed, on the way back, the women shared jokes and, towards the end, transitioned to more risque tales. Acacia hadn't been in such company before, and she alternated between blushing and paling. Leon paid absolutely no attention to the vulgar conversations of the women, occasionally winking at Acacia. Viola liked the assortment of goods that Acacia had brought. "You've done well, you have a good sense of taste. People are willing to give everything they have in their wallets for imported clothes. So, the main rule in our business is to please the customer." Acacia quickly absorbed everything her boss said. She swiftly mastered the intricacies of market trading, and Viola actively encouraged her efforts to sell even slow-moving goods. The aspiring traders' hard work had a positive impact on their lives. Quality products returned to the fridge, and Ingracia could receive proper medical treatment. Changes also began to appear in Acacia's personal life. The shared trips brought her closer to Leon, and she accepted his attentions with undisguised pleasure. Viola also noticed that her driver was always by her assistant's side. With the best of intentions, Viola decided to give the young man a nudge. "Leon, you're like an inexperienced boy. Women like men who are decisive. If you keep wandering around like a bull and lowing, Acacia will find another man." This advice was given publicly at the market. The thrill-seeking women burst into laughter, and the couple didn't know where to hide from the public's attention. Perhaps to get back at the women or out of a desire to prove himself a man, Leon, right there by the counter and without moving an inch, proposed to Acacia in quite an original manner. "Why not, Acacia? Marry me, and let's work together to improve the country's demographics. I can't promise you mountains of gold, but you definitely won't get bored with me." The playful tone of the young man and the inappropriate setting for such an explanation didn't faze the girl. She immediately agreed to marry the person she practically knew nothing about. Acacia was shocked when her daughter shared this joyful news. "Acacia, you can't do this. Marriage is a serious step in every woman's life. After all, you know nothing about this Leon." Acacia didn't expect such a reaction from her mother and tried to reassure her. "Mom, Leon is really nice. He doesn't even smoke, and he's into sports. And I think I love him." And Gracia started crying. "It's just that you think you do. You're not even sure about your feelings. How are you planning to live? You'll be lost without me." And then, with childlike naivety, Gracia suggested, "Mom, I'm not planning to leave here. We have a big apartment, and Leon rents a room in an old lady's place. You're not against it if he moves in with us, right?" Reluctantly, Gracia agreed to the living arrangement, but from the very first day, she didn't like her son-in-law. Likewise, Leon responded to her with the same attitude. As a result, Acacia often found herself playing the role of a referee during their verbal battles, which occurred all too frequently in the kitchen. One day, when the son-in-law wasn't home, Gracia told her daughter, "Acacia, don't you see that your husband is not who he pretends to be? It's written all over his face. And my heart tells me that your marriage will end sadly." The daughter took offense at her mother. "Thanks, Mommy, for your kindness. You're used to thinking only about yourself, so you dislike everything I do." After this exchange of revelations, the daughter and mother stopped communicating for a long time. Gracia became softer only after the birth of Juan. The little grandson became the meaning of life for the ailing woman. Leon also rejoiced at the birth of his son and made grand plans for the future. In his optimistic fervor, he promised his wife, "Acacia, we'll soon be living like in a movie. We'll build a 2-story house with a pool, buy a luxury car, and our son Juan will attend an elite school with a focus on foreign languages." Acacia really wanted to believe in these bright prospects, but these plans were not meant to come true because Leon got involved in a dirty business. Acacia remembered that winter day for the rest of her life, when men in masks burst into their apartment and pulled her husband out of bed. Their little son screamed in fear, and the enforcers paid no attention to the child's cries as they pushed her husband's face to the floor and handcuffed his hands behind his back. The young woman instinctively rushed to her beloved, shouting, "What are you doing? You'll hurt him." But one of the intruders roughly pushed her away. Acacia hit her head against the wall and couldn't hear well. Her husband said goodbye. "Acacia, I will definitely come back. Just wait for me." Neighbors watched from their windows as the men in camouflage led Leon, with his hands twisted behind his back, to the car. A few days later, rumors spread around the neighborhood that Acacia's husband was involved in the death of a prominent businessman. Acquaintances started avoiding Gracia and Acacia, and friends and distant relatives stopped answering their calls. Even Viola, embarrassed, once said, "Acacia, you understand that a rather delicate situation has arisen. You can't go against public opinion, so we have to part ways. Too much is at stake, and I can't risk my reputation. Besides, I'm planning to buy a small store in the area." The business owner compensated the young woman generously and made it clear that any relationship between them was over from that point on. Later, Acacia learned that Viola had become the owner of a chain of stores selling branded clothing. Leon was sentenced to 10 years in a maximum security prison. The young woman no longer wanted to hear about this man and changed her surname back to her maiden name. One also had to get new documents. Public opinion influenced the young woman's life. She unsuccessfully searched for stable employment, making do with occasional earnings. But the hardest blow was her mother's death. Acacia's condition deteriorated rapidly, and she needed expensive medications that her daughter couldn't afford. Dark clouds gathered above the young woman once again, and she no longer believed that the sun would ever shine brightly for her. Human beings are remarkable creatures. They can even adapt to the most unbearable conditions of life. Acacia quickly adjusted to her new status and, against rational logic, managed to use this unfavorable circumstance to her advantage. After all, she had to survive not only for herself but also to raise her son. And for that, she needed money, which she didn't have. She had no one to consult with, and in complete despair, she headed straight to the city administration. Her visit by such a person surprised the officials, but no one wanted to take responsibility. Acacia ran around the offices for an hour until she realized that it wouldn't get her anywhere. She was ready to give up and return home empty-handed when an inner voice softly whispered to her, "Acacia, go see the mayor in person, otherwise, nothing will work." The woman timidly opened the door to the reception area, but the secretary gave her a stern look. "You need to schedule an appointment with the mayor," Acacia requested. "Then please schedule one for me." The secretary gave her an unfriendly look again and asked, "And what is the matter about?" "Job. I can't find a job, and I have a little son. Everyone has children, and Gaspar Gutierrez is very busy. He can't deal with every single mother individually. Go to the deputy or contact social services. I've already visited all the offices." The secretary even stood up in indignation from her swiveling chair, saying, "Please, don't shout here. I told you to go to the deputy. It's right next door, the door opposite the reception." But Acacia didn't follow the secretary's advice. It was mid-morning, and she settled with her little son in a corner not far from the reception. Juan was engrossed in playing with his toy car, whose wheels kept falling off, so it couldn't move properly. The boy huffed under his breath, determinedly reattached the wheels, and then tested the toy. Acacia watched her son, her heart trembling with pity for the child, saying, "Don't worry, my dear. Our time will come too. And then I'll buy you a bicycle and a bunch of different toy cars." The boy got distracted from his activity, asking, "Mom, will that be soon?" Before the woman could answer, a whole group of people appeared in the corridor. One exclaimed, "Wow, Mom, look at their cool cameras." The son referred to the professional cameras in the hands of the two men from the group as photomakers, a playful term he used. The woman hadn't had a chance to think about the purpose of this delegation's visit to the administration when the reception door swung open, and the mayor, sparkling with a flawless smile, emerged to greet the guests. "Please come in, it's a pleasure that our modest town has caught the attention of the media," he said. A suspicion flashed in Acacia's mind. They were television journalists. What followed was spontaneous. The young mother herself hadn't expected such audacity from herself. She darted out from her hiding spot, interrupting the mayor's and the media representatives' exchange of pleasantries. "Gaspar, only you can help me." The mayor's eyes widened beyond their sockets, and his two assistants attempted to push the brazen supplicant away. But cameras were clicking from all sides, and a lively male voice spoke up. "In today's world, where democratic principles have become a part of everyday life, local authorities strive to be closer to the people. The mayor of our city is not indifferent to the hopes of ordinary people who can turn to him for help at any time. Our camera crew is lucky because we are witnessing an act of kindness and compassion. This young town resident has turned to the head of the region, Gaspar Gutierrez." Someone handed a microphone to Acacia's mouth, and the same energetic voice asked, "Tell us, what brought you to the city administration today?" Acacia felt a queasiness rise in her throat. Dozens of eyes were fixed on her, and the cameras emitted an unpleasant buzz. The mayor also awaited her response, but his gaze didn't seem promising. Someone behind her whispered in panic, "Please, don't stay silent. Come on, say something." Unexpectedly, it was Juan who answered for his mother. The boy reached for the microphone, proclaiming loudly, "My mom has some problems finding a job. Our grandma passed away, and my dad went somewhere." The child's response elicited an indescribable enthusiasm among those present. Even the head of administration cracked a smile, and a young reporter dashed to Acacia and whispered to the cameraman, "Zoom in on the boy's face." Then he asked the child a few simple questions, and Juan didn't stumble once during his answers. Everyone watched the boy with affection. Then the microphone was passed to the mayor, and he confidently promised, "I will personally take charge of resolving the matter of Citizen Arias. The city administration will do everything possible to address the existing issue. After all, the main task of the authorities is to improve the lives of ordinary people, and that's why we strive to understand the problems of each citizen." The young reporter chimed in eagerly, "And we'll be keeping an eye on the course of events." Acacia couldn't quite recover, even though the cameras had already been turned off. Assistants escorted the woman and the child into the mayor's office, where the district head smiled warmly at her. "Well, Acacia, you've certainly stirred up some commotion in our sleepy town. I must say, your impromptu move was a success, although I haven't yet grasped the essence of your case. But I can say one thing, today, you were definitely in the right place at the right time. Honestly, I was stunned by your sudden appearance, and your little son deserves special praise. Well done, young man. So small, yet already standing up for his mom. Give me a high five." Juan extended his hand to the mayor. In that moment, he felt his own significance for the first time in his life and took pride in his action. The mayor once again promised the young mother to personally address her employment situation. Later that evening, a news report featuring them aired on television. Not even 10 minutes after the news broadcast, their home phone began ringing off the hook. The most surprising part was that the ones who had recently distanced themselves from her were the first to get in touch. But the main events for Acacia were still ahead. The next morning, exactly at 9 o'clock, she received a call from the administration, urgently requesting her presence in the deputy mayor's office. The official greeted her with a customary smile. "We discussed all the options with Gasper yesterday. How do you feel about business?" This direct question was meant to catch her off guard, but she immediately responded, "I have a positive view. I used to help my employer for a while, but she moved from the town to the capital, where she has a chain of stores." The official interrupted the visitor with enthusiasm. "See, as they say, desire and hard work conquer all. Especially since you have experience. But I don't have an education. Education is something you can acquire. Nowadays, everyone studies through distance learning, and there's nothing stopping you from following that example." The deputy mayor said a lot about the prospects of life in their hometown. Towards the end of his speech, he suggested that the single mother join the ranks of local entrepreneurs. "The sewing workshop where you used to work has been idle for several years now. There will be an auction soon, and the business will go on the block. I admit that the administration has tried many times to find a good owner, but we haven't had luck with buyers. No one even makes it through the trial period. They believe that investing in this enterprise won't pay off. Of course, there are challenges, but you can't avoid them in any venture. A good owner will be able to find the key to unlock the secret." Acacia understood that the deputy mayor was talking about her becoming the future owner of the business. In desperation, she exclaimed, "But I won't be able to handle it. And besides, I don't have the money." The official rubbed his hands together. "You'll manage, and we'll help you. Especially since the case has gained wide publicity, and now the reporters won't leave us alone. I'm sure that within a week, you'll have voluntary sponsors. Our country has that kind of person. Just issue a call, and they'll give their last bit of money for a good cause." The deputy mayor was right. Articles were written about the young entrepreneur who dared to start her own business from scratch. Acacia Arias was invited to television shows multiple times. Benefactors who wanted to help this initiative also showed their support. Max Gill was among the volunteers. Acacia always remembered her second husband with reverence, but unlike her mother, Juan felt a deep hatred for his stepfather, even after many years. The morning conversation had awakened these unpleasant feelings within him, and he entered the office with a sense of unease. He wanted to sort out his thoughts a bit and headed to his own office. But as soon as Juan opened the door, he heard Rodrigo's cheerful voice. "Juan, you're running late today. I've been waiting for you here." At the moment, the last thing he wanted was to listen to the supply manager, and Juan curtly explained. "My wife fell ill, and they took her to the hospital in an ambulance last night." Rodrigo's expression changed. "Oh no. What happened to your wife? If it's a secret, you don't have to tell me. I understand that not everything can be shared about family matters." "It's not a secret. Dora had sudden appendicitis. She never complained before, and then suddenly it hit her. I suppose Acacia went to visit her daughter-in-law this morning? That's why I can see she's running late." "Juan, you have an extraordinary mother. You're incredibly lucky to have her." Juan frowned. "Rodrigo, I know everything about my mother just fine. If you're here for business, why did you get angry so quickly? Did I step on your dignity or something? Rodrigo, let's not turn my office into a place for unnecessary discussions." Rodrigo took offense. It was evident by the not-so-friendly glint in his eyes. He said in a deliberately formal tone, "All right, Juan, let's switch to a business-like mode of communication. If you're not already aware, I must inform you that Acacia assigned our department to handle the purchase of materials and supplies." Juan impatiently interrupted. "I'm aware of it. If that's all you want to tell me, I won't keep you any longer." Rodrigo spoke slowly and deliberately, emphasizing each syllable. "You're jumping to conclusions for no reason, Juan. Remember, this container has a very narrow neck, and not everyone can get out of it once they're in." Juan's temper flared. "Are you threatening me?" "God forbid. Absolutely not. As a delicate person, I just want to draw your attention to a very important point. Don't mess things up at the place where you eat." Rodrigo's last words were delivered with a clear reference to his failed deal. "I warned you, didn't I, that getting involved with Cleopatra was dangerous? But you didn't believe me, did you, Rodrigo? Be thankful that your mother doesn't know about your little adventure. I'm a deeply honorable person and don't engage in whistleblowing." Juan felt cold sweat trickling down his back in big drops. Almost in a whisper, he muttered, "What do you want from me?" "Thank you." Rodrigo headed towards the exit, but right by the door, he turned around. "Juan, want some fatherly advice? Tone down your ambitions. Be simpler, and people will come toward you." Rodrigo closed the door behind him, and Juan sank into a chair, tilting his head back. "What a day it's been today. Dora pulled a stunt in the night, and then my mother surprised me. And now Rodrigo has decided to give me life lessons. He's so much like my late stepfather." The wheel of memory, like in the morning, took a turn into the past, and as the song goes, Juan embarked on the waves of his memories. At the age of just over 8, Juan perceived everything in vivid colors. Adults know how to paint life in shades of gray, but for children, everything is clear-cut, day or night, friend or foe. Max stormed into their lives suddenly, disrupting the established order at home. Until his arrival, only Juan had the right to his mother's attention and love, so the boy's first reaction was one of indignation. Back then, he didn't understand that his mother had made that important decision gradually. Most likely, she had been seeing Max for some time, but hesitated to invite him home. It was late autumn when Acacia told her son, "We'll have a guest today. How do you feel about that?" Juan glared at his mother from under his brow and grumbled, "Not too thrilled. Why do we need guests?" His mother looked flustered and started explaining that people should socialize because it gets boring being alone. The more she spoke, the more Juan scowled. "Mom, I know all about friendship and good relationships, but I believe that it's just fine with just the two of us. But if you need more friends, you can invite them. Just don't make me smile and say silly things." Acacia burst into laughter. Juan, are you jealous? The boy didn't understand the meaning of the word and remained silent. Only during dinner did he ask, "Who's your guest?" The woman had been waiting for this question and answered eagerly, "And you've seen him once before. Remember when we bought the factory, various people came and offered to help us?" Juan remembered that day well because one of the sponsors gave him a gaming console. It broke down quickly, though, but it was still a pleasant memory. "Is he the one who gave me the toy?" "No, sweetheart, that person gave us a few machines. They were used, but in good working condition. His name is Max." The boy asked with feigned bewilderment. "Who? A sewing machine?" Juan burst into laughter, and his mother waited for his fit of merriment to pass. "Son, I'm talking to you seriously, and you're just fooling around." "Okay, Mom, I won't laugh anymore. Just promise me you won't marry this Max." Acacia clearly didn't expect such an ultimatum from her son. "Juan, you're still too young to set conditions for me." The boy countered. "I have rights too. I don't want some guy living in our house, and you're making me call him Dad. Kids in our class told me things like that about their stepfathers." The boy erupted into hysterical shouting and retreated to his room. Due to her concern for his sensitive psyche, Acacia changed her plans. She knocked on her son's door. When he opened it, she said, "Calm down, we won't have any guests today." "Where are you going?" "I'm going on a date, and I'll be back." "With that Max?" "You got it." The woman hugged her son and kissed his forehead. "Juan, don't be such a mean person. You choose friends for yourself at school, don't you? Notice that I don't even interfere in that process. Let me make my own choices too." When his mother left, Juan felt so lonely that he almost burst into tears. He couldn't wait for his mother's return and expressed his final decision right in the hallway. "Mom, let Max come over. I feel really bad being alone without you." Max won the young boy's heart by not trying to act overly friendly with him from their first meeting. He spoke to him like an adult. Although his mother always took his opinion into account too. But Mom was still a woman, and Max was a grown man. Moreover, as the kids at school put it, he had some money. Juan quickly befriended his stepfather. Max took him in his car to the zoo, where various animals lived. He even let the boy sit behind the wheel of his car a few times. There were many other things like that made Juan's classmates green with envy. Acacia was glad that her men found a common language. One day, she said to her son, "Now we have a real family. You like that, don't you?" Juan confessed. "Yes, Mom, Max is really nice. It's fun with him, he told me so many things. And he even promised to take me fishing at night. Mom, I'll definitely catch a carp like this. Or maybe even a catfish." The boy gestured with his hands to show the size of the fish he was planning to catch. One day he asked his stepfather himself, "Can I call you Dad?" Max had been waiting for this question for a long time, and he couldn't hide his excitement. "Of course, kiddo. Call me Dad or Father, whichever you prefer." But the period of family bliss didn't last long. Juan began to notice that his mother was gaining weight. With childish straightforwardness, he said, "Mom, you need to exercise, otherwise, you'll get really fat soon, like Olia Calvo." Olia, the math teacher, did indeed have very curvy forms, and this comparison brought a smile to Acacia's face. "No, I won't be like that because it's temporary." The boy stared at his mother in confusion. "Can that happen?" "It can. I was once that chubby, and then you were born, and I immediately lost weight." Juan was at that age when kids knew where babies came from. Therefore, his mother's confession shocked him. He looked at her smiling face, and within his heart, he felt a sense of outrage, which burst out along with his cry. "You're going to have a baby?" "But I don't want to." The boy went into a fit of hysteria, and Acacia couldn't calm him down. The distressed woman couldn't have anticipated that her son would react so strongly to this news. She was trying to convince him that he would have a little brother or sister and it would be more fun for him. At that time, she didn't understand that her son didn't want to share her with anyone. He had only reluctantly accepted Max because that man fulfilled his wishes. In other words, he brought certain benefits. But what benefits could come from another child? Juan refused to comprehend. Acacia hoped that everything would settle down once the baby arrived. But she was mistaken. When they brought the tiny bundle in a pink blanket home, the newly minted brother wrinkled his nose in disgust. "She smells awful. I don't even want to go near her." Time passed, but the boy didn't relinquish his stance. Clara grew up, and their happy parents rejoiced in her achievements. Only in Juan's heart did hatred blossom with intense colors. He hated his mother for her betrayal, his stepfather for not being able to become a real father for him, but the strongest hatred he harbored was for his little sister. Max was the first to notice that something was amiss in their family. Juan always kept his ears sharp and often eavesdropped on the conversations of adults so as not to miss anything important. He heard his stepfather reproaching his mother in the kitchen. "Acacia, we need to do something about this. It's not normal." The hatred is genuinely consuming the boy. His mother was trying to defend her son. "Max, I think you're just nitpicking at Juan. He's going through adolescence now, so he's displaying his character." "Acacia, but I've seen with my own eyes how he looks at Clara with such hatred. There were moments that had alarmed me before, but I didn't attach much importance to them. Honestly, I'm worried for our daughter. Please, talk to your son. Maybe he'll listen to you." That same evening, a serious conversation took place, but from the very beginning, Juan got defensive and said rudely, "I don't care about you both or Clara. Love her if you want. Just leave me alone. Run around with that girl like she's some discarded bag. As soon as I finish school, you won't see me at all." It was a cry from the soul of a spoiled egoist. In that moment, Acacia realized that, after 16 years, she hadn't truly understood her own son. True to his word, Juan disappeared from his home after receiving his diploma. He didn't even return for vacations because he didn't want to encounter his sister. Then, the woman accidentally found out that somehow Juan had found Leon. This news stunned her, and she went to the city where her son was studying. But Juan didn't even give her the chance to speak. "Mom, you're too late with your advice. I've grown up now and will decide for myself what to do and who to associate with. But I promise I won't interfere with you guys. And furthermore, I'm not going to reject my biological father just because something unpleasant happened between you a long time ago." For several years, the boy indeed didn't appear, only occasionally did he call his mother. While communicating with his biological father, he drastically changed his perspective on life. Now, Juan looked back with horror at the moment he had decided to take revenge. And he had planned to carry out that plan during his stepsister's adulthood. These gloomy memories, even more so than the conversation with Rodrigo, soured Juan's mood. To find some semblance of balance, he dared to confront the state of his wife's health. Acacia didn't like hospitals because medical facilities triggered unpleasant associations for her. After all, she had spent many days and nights by her father's paralyzed bedside. She had stayed with her dying mother around the clock. Therefore, the mere thought of stepping into a hospital filled the woman with a sense of panic. Perhaps that fear was evident on her face when she asked the nurse, "I'm looking for Dora Arias, she's recovering from surgery." The nurse looked at the visitor with concern. "Don't worry, everything is fine with your Dora. She's in room 6. She's probably awake by now after the anesthesia." Acacia draped a white coat over her shoulders and, trying not to make any noise, walked down the corridor. Near the room where her daughter-in-law was recovering, she stopped and, for some reason, knocked. Someone yelled loudly from inside, "Come in. Sorry that we can't come to greet you." The cheerful voice belonged to a girl who was lying by the window with an open book. There were 4 people in the room in total, and Acacia didn't immediately spot Dora. She turned to the same girl who had invited her. "Where's Dora?" "Oh, there she is, right by the door." "Still sleeping?" Dora chimed in. "How can anyone sleep here?" "Marina, you're shouting like crazy." "That's right, it's time to wake up." "Let me just be sick. After all, I've never been in a hospital. Only once in my childhood did some bug fly into my ear, and the doctors had a hard time getting it out." Dora shifted her gaze to Acacia. "I knew you'd be the first to visit me. Did Juan scare you?" "On the contrary, he told me everything very tactfully." Acacia took her future daughter-in-law's hand. "Tell me, how are you feeling?" The restless Marina said. "She's fine. She'll be up and running by evening." Dora glanced at her companion. "Marina, could you be quiet for just a minute? I've been in this room for less than a day, and I'm already tired of you." "Yeah, don't worry, my friend, they promised to discharge me today. So you'll have more time to miss me." Dora helplessly shrugged. "I'm sorry, Acacia, but it seems we won't be able to have a decent conversation." "All right, I'll drop by tomorrow." "No need to bother yourself. I'm not that sick to require daily visits. Dad is also worried, and he should be coming soon." Juan told him, but I asked him not to panic. Dora tried to sit up but immediately winced in pain. Her mother-in-law quickly rushed to her side. "Let me help you, dear." Marina chimed in again. "Dreaming of having a mother-in-law like that. Although I'm not in a rush to get married yet, it doesn't hurt to dream." "All right, I won't disturb you any longer, I'll gather my stuff." The girl began to pack her things into a plastic bag, peppering the process with witty remarks. Acacia started to say her goodbyes to her future daughter-in-law, and at that moment, a nurse peeked into the room. "Marina, are you ready?" Marina stretched and raised her hand with an imaginary salute. "Always ready." Acacia stared at the girl's hand, not immediately grasping what had caught her attention. Dora noticed that something was amiss with her mother-in-law. "Is everything okay with you?" "Oh, no, everything's fine," but the woman's eyes were fixated on Marina's neighboring bed. Meanwhile, Marina grabbed her bag and slipped past them. It was only then that Acacia realized her concern was centered around a silver bracelet adorning the girl's wrist. She quickly bid her future daughter-in-law goodbye. "Dora, I should go. I'll call you in the evening." Acacia had hoped to catch up with Marina in the hall and ask how she got the bracelet. But right at the door, she bumped into Dora's father. "Perico, you scared me." The man also didn't expect such an unusual encounter. "You nearly knocked me off my feet." "Acacia, is there a fire somewhere?" "No, I'm just afraid of losing someone." "Well, I won't keep you." She rushed down the corridor, but Marina was nowhere to be seen. Neither in the cloakroom nor in the reception area did Acacia find the girl. She stepped outside, where a few men in hospital uniforms were walking around, but there were no women nearby. Acacia sat down on a bench, trying to calm herself. "You're just imagining that it's the same bracelet that Clara was given for her 18th birthday. Who knows how many similar trinkets are out there for sale? Go to any jewelry store, and you'll surely find a similar piece." Unexpectedly, she heard a familiar voice nearby. "Acacia, what's the matter with you?" "I have to admit, I'm concerned about your state, so I said goodbye to Dora." "You shouldn't have, Perico. I'm perfectly fine. Don't fool an experienced detective. I have a trained eye, and I immediately noticed that something happened, causing you instant stress. Tell me, perhaps I can help you." Although Dora and Juan had been married for over 3 years, their parents rarely met. Mostly, they only saw each other on major holidays. So, their acquaintance was quite superficial, and they never discussed personal matters. The woman remained silent for a moment, then looked at him hopefully. "You know, Perico, you can actually help me." The man sat down next to her, and it was evident by looking at him that his professional instincts had been aroused. All right, I think I know what prompted you to chase after that girl who hurriedly left the room just before I arrived. Probably a shadow from the past or something else. More likely, it was a sign from above. Wow, I never suspected you were superstitious. Sometimes in life, there are moments when a person starts to believe in higher powers. It rarely happens to me. But today, since early in the morning, my grandmother came to mind, and then this girl with the bracelet. You've intrigued me. If you can, tell me more about everything. And Acacia told Dora's father how many years ago she and her husband had given their daughter a bracelet for her adulthood, which was custom made by a jeweler known to her husband. It was a personalized item. There's an engraving on the inside. Clara had long dreamed of such a thing and was very pleased with the gift. And a few days later, she disappeared. Tell me, under what circumstances did your daughter go missing? Tears welled up in the woman's eyes, and she took out a handkerchief from her purse. I'm sorry, Perico. Oh, come on, I don't know what it's like to lose a child. I've encountered many similar cases in my practice, and unfortunately, not all of them ended well. But I still have hope. I feel it in my heart that my Clara is alive. I didn't want to let her go on that ill-fated trip. And my husband said that we shouldn't forbid our girl from doing what she likes. Clara loved to travel so much, and that day they went to the lakes as a group. The elders claimed that it was a place of power, full of legends. One also went because he was concerned about the young people. He's almost 10 years older than Clara. Perico waited for the continuation of the story, but Acacia remained silent. Only after about 5 minutes, with an eerie sense of inevitability, she said, they discovered that Clara disappeared only in the morning. The group was searching for her. They went through all the nearby villages, but nobody had seen a girl with those features. She seemed to vanish, like she dissolved into thin air. My husband couldn't bear this loss. The search lasted for over a week, but it yielded no results, and Max had a heart attack. He loved his daughter so much. Acacia broke down in tears, and the matchmaker gave her the chance to cry. Let it out, relieve your soul. I promise I will do my best to find out what happened on that trip. Has your son told you anything about the incident? After all, he's the main witness. The woman waved her hand. Juan was sleeping. He didn't see or hear anything. He was searching for his sister along with the other participants. It's been so many years, I doubt he'd remember any specific details now. Acacia fell silent, as if recalling something important. Perico, perhaps it matters that we didn't find Clara's documents. Her passport and driver's license disappeared along with her. Wow! Your daughter was driving a car? She hadn't started driving on her own yet, but her father promised to buy her a small car. That's an important detail. As soon as I find out something specific, I'll let you know. But first, I'll try to find that girl with the mysterious bracelet. Acacia watched the matchmaker leave with a long gaze. Suddenly, she felt a calmness in her heart, similar to what she felt after a prayer in church. Clara, or rather, Luz, the name she was currently using, felt out of sorts. Everything had been slipping through her fingers since the morning, and she even managed to forget the keys to her apartment on the nightstand. Unpleasant thoughts were swirling in her head, and what do I do now? I have to open the door, fix the lock, and buy a new one. The landlady will find out for sure. She'll either scold me or give me a day to vacate. And that's worse than the first option. With these gloomy thoughts, Clara appeared at the office of the company, where she had been working as a courier for just over a year. The head of the department immediately pounced on her. Luz, where have you been? What do you mean, where? I was carrying out your instructions, delivering mail to the addresses you gave me. You need to move faster. You're young after all. Luz always got annoyed when people who lacked education tried to act important. And what, Laura, if I'm young, I should run around like a horse. By the way, you're not much older than me. Don't compare us, Luz. You still have a long way to go, unlike me. The girl retorted. Don't worry about your position, Laura, I'm not aiming for it. The department head smirked. Oh, of course not. Go and work. You still need to distribute advertising leaflets for today, and then prepare the monthly report for tomorrow. Isn't that a bit much for one person? Those are your direct responsibilities, Luz. Well, right, Laura, half the department is lounging around and growing their behinds, while I'm running around for everyone. Luz expressed her dissatisfaction with a deep sense of disdain for the slackers who made up the majority of the company's staff. For the umpteenth time that year, she thought with melancholy that she had joined this company for nothing. Wanting to somehow console herself, she muttered, "But did I have a choice? My whole life has long turned into one continuous quest. And I don't know when I'll reach the finish line." From the vantage point of her life, the young woman scolded herself for that childish act, but she couldn't afford to go back in time because she knew where it would lead if she disappeared. She had replayed the events of a decade ago in her mind many times and concluded that she would make the same choice today. Clara learned to feel first and then speak. One of her earliest childhood memories was of her older brother's face contorted with malice. When their parents weren't around, he frightened her. Later, Juan began to use harsher means of control over his younger sister. He would douse her with icy water, saying things like, "Die, you damned doll." Often, her loving brother would secretly feed her sweets to provoke an outbreak of her skin rash. He would give her cat food on the sly and laugh at her when she spat it out. Of course, when Clara was very young, she thought her brother was playing with her. But over time, she came to understand that it wasn't a game but a sophisticated form of torment. Complaining to her mother about her brother's behavior was useless, as her mother believed that her daughter was making everything up. "Clara, these are all your fantasies, and you want me to believe in them?" Only their father tried to protect her from Juan's bullying. Life became a bit easier when Juan went to college. Peace and tranquility immediately returned to the house, and all the parental love was showered on her alone. But one day, her brother returned, and Clara realized he was up to something. Her instincts didn't deceive her. One day, she accidentally saw Juan talking to an unfamiliar man. She hadn't seen this person in town before and decided to follow her brother for a bit. The man didn't evoke any positive emotions. In fact, he was rather unpleasant. He dressed decently and was fairly good-looking, but there was something repelling about him. Clara, of course, didn't talk to him, but she got a good enough look at him. He reminded her of someone, but she couldn't figure out who. Only on the fourth or fifth day of tailing her brother did she manage to get close enough to overhear their conversation. Juan and the man entered a cafe, and Clara followed them immediately. She sat at a table behind an archway where they couldn't see her, but she could hear them perfectly. They were talking about her. Not only about her, but about their family in general. The more Clara listened, the more her hair stood on end. Her brother couldn't come up with anything more original than simply getting rid of his detested sister. This man even seemed to try to dissuade him. "Listen, Juan, in essence, she's not to blame for anything. It's all your grandmother's fault, which means it's your mother's fault too. If she had waited for me to be released from prison, we could have lived together, just the three of us. Dad, let's not talk about this anymore. She's my mother, and she has the right to live, but the rest of them. And I want to start with my little sister. She's ruined my entire life." The man responded immediately. "All right, calm down. If you've decided, then we need to act. I didn't realize you hated her that much. Do you have any thoughts on how to pull this off?" "No, you have some experience in these matters, so that's why I turned to you for help." "All right, spill the beans. Where does she go? What places does she like? We need to do everything in such a way that not a soul suspects a thing." Juan began to talk, and Clara was afraid to breathe. She was terrified because her brother was calmly listing everything she enjoyed, everywhere she went. And all the while, he was discussing with his father how they could discreetly make her disappear. And it had to be done so cunningly that no one would suspect a thing. After Juan got rid of her, he dealt with their father. "She's planning a trip with her friends. They love extreme nature. Oh, more details on that? This could be very interesting for us. After hearing everything Juan said, the man exclaimed, "This is what we need." The girl could get lost in the woods, drown, or fall from somewhere. There are countless possibilities. Juan said in confusion, "I don't understand. Do I have to do that to her?" "Well, who else? You hate her so much, are you going to send someone else on the trip? Don't hesitate, you're a healthy guy, and she's just a young girl. You'll manage, and we'll plan everything. But how do I join them? They're not my friends. I do know some of them, but we're not close enough for me to go with them." "Oh, that's actually quite simple. You'll just tell your mother that these trips aren't safe, that you're worried about your sister. After all, she's still so young, and you'll go just to keep an eye on her." The men had long since left, but Clara was still sitting there, sinking into the chair. She needed to do something. She knew Juan would convince and persuade their mother, and Clara wouldn't be able to change her mind. In fact, her mother might even become more determined, thinking that her daughter didn't want to be under her care. And furthermore, her mother would be thrilled that they were finally establishing a good relationship. Everything happened exactly as Clara had anticipated. Her mother was delighted that Juan expressed a desire to accompany Clara on the trip. She kept repeating, "Well, that's great. Your siblings, you should have close, trusting relationships." Juan would smile at his sister, and Clara would carefully smile back. She couldn't show him that she knew everything or suspected anything. Otherwise, she might not even make it on the trip. She had planned everything meticulously. Clara had always been known for her sound reasoning, so she double-checked everything multiple times to ensure there would be no mistakes. Juan was supposed to do something to her during the night. Moreover, on the very first night, she was certain he wouldn't back down from anything, so she prepared seriously. Clara had money, not the allowance that her parents frequently transferred to her account, but cash she had been saving up for years. She hadn't been saving up for anything specific, just putting aside the leftovers from her pocket money. She had always been serious and frugal. Furthermore, she didn't really have much to spend because she had everything she needed. She took everything essential with her. She took all her money, especially since no one in the house knew about her savings. And most importantly, Clara had memorized one address, which she had copied from her father's notebook. It was Eleonora's address, the woman her father had been seeing before he met her mother. Clara's choice wasn't random. Once, when Clara believed she was in love and clashed with her father over it, she shouted at him, "Dad, what do you know about love? You met Mom, and that's your whole love story." Max had smiled then. "Well, that's just your opinion. Do you want me to tell you about a wonderful woman I still can't forget? I love your mother very much, but Eleonora, well, she was not just a woman but also a dear, understanding friend." Clara looked at him, her eyes widening. She couldn't even fathom that someone other than each other could have a place in their parents' lives. "We met Eleonora by chance. She scolded me for almost running over a kitten. Of course, I noticed it too late and stopped right away, but she gave me a good scolding. You know, she looked so beautiful in her anger. And then things started to unfold. Eleonora resisted until the very end. She was married, and her disabled husband did nothing but get on her nerves. I suggested many times that she should leave him, and then she just drove me away. She said she was really happy with me, that I had shown her a different life, but she couldn't leave her husband and didn't want to lie anymore. I understood her. Deception was too heavy for her, she was so pure, you could say. Eleonora made me promise that I would never try to contact her again and that I would try to find happiness in my own life. I tried to help her financially at least, but she wouldn't accept that either. That's how it was." Clara recalled that after her father's story, she hadn't slept the whole night. And when she thought about whether the young man she had fallen in love with was capable of such actions, she realized that this wasn't love after all. Clara had intended to seek help precisely from her. Juan kept looking at her the entire time as they made their way to the location. Clara even felt sick from his gaze. She felt like cornered prey. Everything went well. As soon as everyone settled down and the girl Clara shared a tent with fell asleep, she quietly took her backpack and peeked outside. Conversations could still be heard in the tents, which meant that Juan wouldn't take any action now. And in general, he was unlikely to do anything during the night, as it would become clear that someone present here was responsible for her demise. Clara didn't plan to hide for long. She needed some time to pass. Perhaps things would change, or she would come up with a way to get out of this situation. For now, her mind was blank. An elegant woman opened the door. "Hello, are you here for me?" "Yes, are you Eleonora?" The woman looked at her with interest. "Yes, I'm Eleonora. But do we know each other?" Clara smiled sadly. "Not exactly. I'm Max Gill's daughter." Eleonora stepped back, pressing her hands to her chest. "What's wrong with Max?" Clara hurriedly reassured her. "No, everything's fine with Dad. He talked about you, so I came to you. I need help, but only from someone no one would suspect." Eleonora looked at her closely. "Come in. I'm alone now. My daughter went to her grandmother's. It's strange, but Dad didn't mention a daughter. Maybe she was born later." They talked the whole night through. Eleonora agreed that it would be better for Clara to stay with her for a while. "Don't worry, you won't cause any inconvenience at all. My daughter Marina is very easygoing. You'll definitely get along." "How old is she?" "She's 2 years older than you. After your father and I broke up, just a couple of years later, my husband passed away, drank himself to death. I even came to your city to find your dad. But then I learned that he got married and that his wife was expecting a child. So, I left right away." Clara smiled sadly. "I guess I should feel jealous of my dad and resent my mom. But it seems like my mom took your place." "No, never think that way. Your mom met Max when I wasn't around anymore. She didn't take anyone's place. Everything happened as it was meant to. And besides, it's been many years now, so it's all in the past. Marina turned out to be genuinely friendly. And also, Clara felt like they had something in common. Clara even gave her the bracelet that meant a lot to her. And then Marina came into the room and said, 'Clara, your dad died.' These news stories are spreading all over the internet now. From that moment on, Clara's life split into before and after. Clara, maybe you should stay? Where will you go? How will you live? Like everyone else, I'll rent an apartment, find a job. But we're not kicking you out." Eleonora wiped her tears, and Clara quickly spoke. "Please understand me, I can't live peacefully, pretending like nothing happened. Dad died, it's because of me. I should have known it would turn out this way. Dad loved me so much, and Mom will never forgive me. Let it be this way. Mom has already mourned both me and Dad. And I'll start over. Whatever happens, happens. At least give me your new address." "No, Eleonora, forgive me, please. I don't deserve to have any connection with you." "Clara, but you can't hide forever. They will find you eventually. You'll be working, and there will be some records. You can be found. No one will find me." Clara stepped into the night, a brand new, crisp passport in the pocket of her jacket, which she had obtained not too long ago for a considerable sum of money. It was almost everything she had. Dora was being discharged in a week. Throughout this time, Acacia hadn't seen Perico, and then they bumped into each other face to face. "Acacia? Hello, are you also here for Dora?" "Well, my daughter belongs to you more than to me by now. So, I'm just here to greet her and take her home." "Well, I won't let you off that easily. Let's have coffee together, at least." Perico smiled. "I won't refuse it. Especially since I managed to find out something." Acacia raised her eyebrows. So quickly? Did you really find something about that girl? Yes, I did. Wow. I didn't even know it could be done so fast. They've been searching for my daughter for so many years, and still no progress. Well, Acacia, that's if you work for a salary. But if you work as friends, it's a whole different story. I'm not justifying my colleagues, but that's life. The woman nodded sadly. Yes, unfortunately, you're right. Dora sadly asked her mother-in-law. Juan didn't come, did he? No, Dora, he couldn't make it. You see, there have been some changes in our company, and it's really swamped under Rodrigo's management. He'll try to come earlier today. He sends his regards to you as well. Dora smiled. I can imagine what mood he'll be in. I've heard plenty about Rodrigo already. Acacia laughed. Complaining? There's nothing to worry about, let him study. It's for his own good. Dora had been with them for just 10 minutes. I'll lie down for a while, still feeling a bit weak. Of course, go ahead, dear. Perico smiled. It's so unusual, even strange, to hear someone calling my daughter dear. Acacia smiled. But she really feels like a daughter to me. You know, sometimes I feel like she's very much like Clara, just as tender, just as kind. Perico frowned. Well, that's exactly what we need to talk about. Acacia straightened up. Yes, I'm listening very attentively. Perico pulled out a small notebook. So here's what I managed to find out. Marina Castro lives in a small town. By the way, your late husband lived in that town for a while. I don't understand. What does Max have to do with this? Don't rush, Acacia. So, this girl lives with her mother. The mother is just a couple of years younger than you, but that's not important. I went to that town. I walked around, looked around, talked to people, and found out a very interesting detail. This woman gave birth to her daughter while she was married. Everything seems fine, but her husband couldn't have children because he was, pardon me, crippled after some accident. Everyone talked about a woman who was seeing someone wealthy and handsome. He invited her to go with him, but she refused and stayed with her husband. As you understand, in small towns, everyone knows everything about everyone. And they love to discuss things, especially if you show the right interest. Of course, I managed to show that interest. And it turns out, based on all parameters, that the mother of Marina was indeed your husband. Back in those times, he wasn't your husband yet, most likely wasn't even acquainted with you. Because only after breaking up with that woman did he move here. I don't quite understand how the bracelet and everything else are connected. There's been very little time. But I promise you, I will definitely find out everything. Acacia silently got up and left the room. She returned, placing several stacks of money in front of the man. Here, this is for your expenses. Something tells me you're on the right track. As soon as we find out about the bracelet, or, in other words, how it ended up with that girl, we'll know everything about Clara. Perico, I'm asking you, don't tell my son anything. I have a feeling, I don't know why, that he won't feel any joy if Clara is found. And he'll also say that I've lost my mind because Clara is considered deceased, and only I can't believe it. Perico nodded. Don't worry. As long as our investigation is ongoing, no one will know anything. I understand everything. I'll take the money, but just a bit, enough for round-trip tickets. Acacia shook her head. No, take all the money. It's for all the expenses. And also, she got up and fetched some keys. These are the keys to my husband's car. No one uses it, it's in the garage. They take it out for inspection every 6 months, and that's it. I'll call the garage to have it handed over to you. Perico stood up. Thank you so much for the car. Getting around on buses and trains takes so long. You know, don't get too convinced that Clara will be found. You understand that you might be disappointed. Acacia quickly looked at him. I'm certain she's alive. You can't do anything about it. Juan arrived a bit earlier, as promised. He embraced his wife. Dora, see, why did appendicitis happen to you specifically? I missed you so much. Dora laughed. You say it as if in our town there's only been one appendicitis case in 3 years, and it happened to me. No, of course not. Will someone be feeding me? Dora put a finger to her lips. SHH, don't shout like that. Mom probably doesn't feel well. She locked herself in her room and hasn't come out for a few hours. Juan raised an eyebrow. It wasn't like his mother. Her favorite, Dora, had been discharged from the hospital, and yet his mother wasn't bustling around her like a mother hen. Juan gently knocked on the door. Mom, can I come in? Yes, dear, come in. He entered the room and frowned. Mom, why are you doing it again? There were photographs of Clara around Acacia. She looked at her son with tear-filled eyes. I don't understand why memories of Clara upset you so much. She's your sister, after all. Juan tried to soften the moment. Mom, you misunderstood me. I just don't want to see you so upset. Why? Clara is gone, and nothing will bring her back. It's been so many years, you could have come to terms with it by now. No, I'll never come to terms with it, and you know that. Besides, lately, I've had this premonition that we'll find her soon. Juan almost blurted out, I hope that's not, but he stopped himself in time. Lately, he has had too many unsettling premonitions. One of them was that if someone remembered the Cleopatra Company again, they would inevitably discover that he himself had created the company and Leon, his father, was running it. The same person who was once his mother's husband. Juan didn't want to harm his mother, but she was overwhelming him with her care. He couldn't openly go against her, and waiting for the company to come into his possession on legal grounds didn't appeal to him either. He wanted to become the sole owner of the company as soon as possible and make decisions independently, finally getting rid of that annoying Rodrigo. Mom, shall we go have dinner? Dora is already setting the table. Dora? She should be resting. Oh, why do I always scatter my thoughts like this? His mother hurriedly made her way to the kitchen, and Juan grabbed one photo of his sister, hissing. Why don't you let me live in peace even now? I hope you've been dead for a long time. He tossed the photo back in its place and followed Acacia. Perico appeared a week later with utterly shocking news. However, he didn't know how to handle the situation now. What he had learned couldn't leave life unchanged. Not anyone's life, neither Acacia's nor Juan's, and certainly not his daughter's. Perico called Acacia. We need to meet, I have a lot of news. Acacia was at work at the moment. She picked up the phone to inform her son that she'd be away. But then she changed her mind and dialed Rodrigo's number. Rodrigo, I need to step away, but I need nobody to know that I'm not at the company. Anyone in particular? Rodrigo always understood her from the first word. Especially Juan. All right, I got it. Do you need any assistance? Honestly, I'm not sure yet. I'll call you. And also, I can't stop thinking about that Cleopatra Company. Can you find out more about it? I'll do that. Especially since it's been bothering me as well. Acacia took a seat in front of Perico. I've ordered coffee for you. Yes, thank you. What have you found out? Well, I guess I'll start with the most important. Your daughter is alive. Well, at least she was alive when everyone thought she had died. Acacia paled and grabbed her chest. Please, calm down. It's not that simple. We're going to have a difficult and long conversation. The woman listened attentively to everything Perico was telling her. From time to time, she nodded. No, this simply can't be true. It is, Acacia. The girl was so terrified that she didn't dare ask anyone she knew for help. Do you understand? She nodded. Yes, Clara told me about Juan several times, but I always thought it was just a product of her imagination. Because she was a teen, everything seemed so significant. But why did she go there specifically? Well, that's another piece of news for you. The thing is, Max did have a relationship with Eleonora. And after they broke up, she gave birth to a daughter named Marina, whom you saw at the hospital. It's not hard to guess that if her husband was incapable of having a child in Max. Well, in short, it seems Marina is Max's daughter, and he never found out. Perhaps that's why the girls became such close friends, and why Clara gave her the bracelet. Acacia looked up at Perico. I don't understand. So many years have passed, why didn't Clara come back? Well, there are several reasons for that. The main one, which she also told Eleonora, is that she blames herself for her father's death. She feels guilty towards you, towards the whole world. Whether she's punishing herself this way or her sense of guilt towards you is truly immense. And secondly, are you certain that if Clara returns, she will be safe? After all, it was only because she overheard that conversation that her life was spared. No, this simply can't be true. Juan couldn't have done it. Acacia, I'm really sorry to say this, but I will have to tell everything to our daughter. She needs to know who's around her. After all, it's dangerous. No, Juan can't be a monster. He's my son. At that moment, Acacia's phone rang in her pocket. She picked it up. Rodrigo, is it something urgent? I'm a bit busy. I won't take up much of your time. I want to tell you that the head of Cleopatra is quite familiar to you. It's Juan's father. Leon? Yes. Moreover, Juan actually set up that company for him. But why? If you stop thinking of Juan solely as your son, everything will become clear to you. Rodrigo hung up, and Acacia looked up at Perico. The man involuntarily shivered, her gaze had changed so much. Before him sat a lady with a steely look and a very serious expression. Perico, I'll need your help again. Don't worry, I'll send Dora to the seaside today itself. I'll tell her she needs to recover, she'll listen to me. Yes, thank you. I'll do everything I can. She leaned toward him and began to speak. Acacia, but I don't want to go anywhere without Juan. Dora, can't you understand? Juan needs a healthy wife, and your hemoglobin levels are low. You really need to rest. Besides, he's so busy right now that you won't even see him. Juan, who initially reacted with displeasure to his mother's words, sighed. Dora, Mom is right. Lately, she's been bombarding me with work. Nothing will happen to us in a week. Go, have a rest, and come back as soon as possible. Of course, he didn't like that his mother didn't suggest he take a break as well, but lately, she seemed to be in a strange mood. So, it was better to stay quiet and continue working to finally put the Cleopatra matter behind them. His father was no better. As soon as he sensed trouble, he simply took money wherever he could and disappeared. And now he had to deal with the consequences. His mother nodded and left for her room. She didn't even kiss him. The next day, when Dora flew out, he returned to work, and Acacia called him. Juan, I need to go away for a few days. I'll call you. Mom. But on the other end, he heard short beeps. Then he got a message, Rodrigo is the head now. Oh, how much he wanted to say to her right now. But his mother didn't pick up the phone again. She was traveling with Perico to where, presumably, her daughter was located. Luz, you're late again. Clara inwardly groaned, what a disaster this day has been. Everything has been going wrong since this morning. The faucet leaked in the morning. Of course, she couldn't buy a new one at 7 in the morning. But leaving it like that would mean causing trouble with the neighbors. She had to wait for the plumber, who, as usual, wasn't in a hurry. Laura, I swear, it's not my fault. The woman crossed her arms over her chest and looked at her. Well, I'm listening. Tell us about the next mishap that, somehow, only happens to you. That wasn't true. Everyone in the office was often late, but only Clara seemed to get the blame. At this point, she understood perfectly well that she wouldn't be able to work under these conditions any longer. You know what, Laura? I won't bother telling you anything or proving anything, because it's all pointless. The boss raised her eyebrows. What are you saying? Who do you think you're talking to? A little runaway boy? Or rather, a little runaway girl. So keep running silently. Otherwise, you'll be out of here before you know it. And I'd gladly leave. But I'm curious, what will your phrasing be? You do realize that I have nothing to lose now, and I'll go to our CEO to tell him about how the department is ruining the company's performance. And I'll even explain why this is happening. Laura was taken aback by Clara's audacity. This girl has been hinting at her incompetence for a while now. How dare you? Get out. And you won't get a single penny from me. No salary. Clara gloomily thought that paying the rent for her apartment was now definitely impossible. On what grounds are you withholding the money an employee earned? You must pay them within 24 hours. Laura stared at the woman who had approached them in amazement. Clara froze, afraid to turn around. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She wanted to run, but she knew that such coincidences didn't happen. Her mother had found her. Everything seemed to fade into a haze from there. She couldn't hear Laura's response. She slowly turned towards where her mother was standing. Mommy! Clara practically fell into Acacia's embrace, who held on with her last strength. My girl! Why didn't you tell me everything? Why do you blame yourself? What if I hadn't found you? Juan had to leave after the conversation with his mother. He was listening to everything in silence, bowing his head. Only once did he say, Are you willing to put me in jail for her? Well, as always. You're wrong. I won't put you in jail, but only because you're my son. And I'm giving you a chance to start a new life. And I'll even help with that. But you have no right to decide how or who should live. You're not God. Dora said she would go with her husband. He needed someone close, and there was no one closer to him than her. Perico wasn't very happy with this decision, but he accepted his daughter's choice. Acacia got to know Eleonora, and after a short time, they became true friends. Meanwhile, Clara and Marina diligently studied to take charge of the company. A year after all the events, Clara and Marina came home, mysteriously smiling. Moms, we have news for you. The women, sipping their coffee, exchanged glances. Sounds ominous. At Acacia's insistence, Eleonora moved closer to them. Clara laughed and nudged Marina in the side. Come on, you'll do it better. Marina took a deep breath and said, Today we have guests. We decided to introduce you to our boyfriends, to, so to speak, get your approval for, well, in short, Clara and I are getting married. The girls expected any reaction, but not this one. Marina's mother snorted first, followed by Clara's mother. After a second, the women burst into laughter. Marina and Clara looked at them offendedly. What's so funny about what we said? Acacia waved her hands. Nothing, girls. Really, nothing. We were actually planning to tell you the same thing today. What do you mean? Clara stared at her mother in confusion. The women exchanged glances again. Well, we wanted to introduce someone to you today too. Marina asked cautiously. But you're not getting married, are you? Eleonora nodded. That's exactly what we're doing. Clara asked somewhat foolishly. Really? And to whom? Acacia answered. I'm marrying Rodrigo, and Eleonora is marrying Perico. The girls exchanged glances and suddenly burst into laughter, rushing to hug their mothers. But that's wonderful. That's just awesome. We'll all be married and happy. How about we have 4 weddings on the same day? Acacia waved her hand. Oh, come up with something else. Well, how can we do that on the same day? It's better if you all gather at the store. It seems like we'll have to set the table much more seriously today than we thought. Juan didn't attend the wedding but called to congratulate them. Dora couldn't come because she was expecting a child. All the men supported the girl's idea, and nearly the whole town turned out to watch as a real procession of wedding cars moved down the street. No one in the town could remember a time when two mothers and two daughters were getting married on the same day.